Hi there, a warm welcome back to Red Eyes Creations Radio. My name is Henrik Palmgren and this is Internet Talk Radio, broadcasted from the west coast of Sweden. Nice to have you along. Thank you for tuning in. We are here on Thursdays and Sundays. You can listen to our program through our website, redicecreations.com. That's REDICE creations.com. where we also feature news, articles, links, videos, and much more, so do take a look. Today we have Daniel Tatman back on the program to continue our mini-series on his upcoming book titled The Bath Mysteries. And last time we talked with Daniel, we talked about some of his background. We dived into masonry, secret societies, Masonic cornerstone markings, and we also discussed some of the architecture of Bath and different architectural styles. Fascinating program, and I encourage you to go back into our archive and tune into those first two segments with Daniel to get the full background on where we're going here today. So we're going to discuss the origins and foundings of Bath today. We're also going to discuss some of the myths connecting with the Welsh, Celtic and Druidic stories, some of the Saxon legends, the Arthurian cycle, and much more. So settle in and brace yourself for another excellent program here with Daniel. I also want to mention his blog, by the way. He recently got it up there, and new material is being added all the time. So do take a look at that. You can find it by simply going to www.thebathmystery.blogspot.com. That's thebathmystery and an s.blogspot.com. So with that, let's say welcome to our guest. Hi, Daniel. Great to have you back on the program. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, Henrik. Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to come back and continue the series.
Brilliant. Everything fine with you today? We're at the cusp, as it were, of the summer solstice, and it's nice to get into some, some Druidic, Celtic, and Welsh material here today.
Absolutely, yeah. It's firmly put in the minds of people. I'd say that the two things are very connected. You know, when you're thinking about solar and lunar festivals, a lot of the time your mind does drift back to Britain. Beautiful.
And are you doing anything special for the summer solstice? I mean, here in Sweden we have the classic midsummer's kind of a celebration going on. That's the night before the actual summer solstice. Or do you have any plans, Daniel?
I think if I can get a lift off one of my friends, I'll probably go to Avebury.
Cool, really?
But I might not do that and just end up going to the High Point in Bath, which is a very nice big round hill which I can look out over the whole city and even look as far as about 25, 35 miles away. So it's a great spot.
And I guess Bath is fairly small in that sense. You can get an overview of the entire city if you go up there.
Yeah. There's about 2 or 3 points where you can do that, and they're great spots, obviously, for any of the solar or lunar or other sort of stellar festivals that go on.
Beautiful. So it's a timely program as we're doing it here today. So I think we should dive into here at the beginning some of the origins of Bath. I mean, there's very much information in regards to the mythology, the background, some of the characters who have been involved in founding of Bath and so forth. But I mean, if you were to put a date on this, Daniel, have someone out there made an educated guess about this? Do we know how old Bath is at this point?
Well, from an archaeological standpoint, I mean, they found there's a Celtic settlement which is known as Little Salisbury, after Salisbury Hill near Glastonbury. So this little hill is known as what they call a Celtic hill fort, and so it was an ancient Celtic settlement. They've found different hunting materials and other signs that there were people living there from about 1000 to 1500 BC. But very recently, just in the last year and a half, they've been building a new bus station and a big shopping centre in the centre of the city. And when they were actually digging for the foundations, they found Celtic remains which they dated between 6,000 to 8,000 years ago. So, I mean, because of this huge shopping centre which they're building, I mean, that's not exactly the best way to start a new venture, you know, to bring it to people's minds that they're building this new corporate facility on top of an ancient Celtic site. So it a very big story at first, but it's very much been kind of put on the back burner, and you can't really find much out about it. But I think when I do get some good confirmation back from the local papers, I'll put something up on the blog about it.
Very good. But to this day, then we can say about between 6,000 and 8,000 years old. That's the guess.
Yeah, I mean, from the archaeological point, yeah, I'd say that from the actual evidence that we can see, you could put it anywhere from 2 to 8,000 BC. But that's just based on evidence. I mean, that doesn't actually take into account the logic of, obviously, people have lived here for thousands and thousands of years.
Right.
And there's been remains in other parts of England and Wales, and very close to here, which go back, into what they call the Mesolithic era.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And so, we know that there's been people here a lot longer than that. And so, logically, the place had a huge natural spring with water being pumped out of the ground. So any of these places would always be absolutely fundamental. They would be key. You'd have to get clean water.
Yeah.
You could use it for yourself, for drinking, for washing, for metal smithing, for different types of building, agriculture. So anywhere in the world which you would find a natural spring, especially a large one, you'll have a settlement there right from the beginning. So logically, it doesn't stand up that would be the founding time of the settlement here. But that's what we see from the evidence.
Right, exactly. So it's probably as soon as people were either migrating up there or if they came from another part, probably they settled there as soon as they spotted the place, I guess, because of the resource.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we see that anyway through the later history. Every group that kind of conquers England, the south of England, what we now know as England, always came to Bath and took over the place. And there was baths for bathing in, and there was water to be drunk, and it was a real hot spot of activity throughout the ages.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can see it. There's a lot of evidence for this just in mainstream history.
So if we talk about the origins of Bath in relationship to the I don't know if we should call it the mythology of Bath. I mean, I guess that there is a lot documentation on this and so forth. But what does that state, Daniel? How did Bath came into existence to begin with?
Sure. Yeah. While I was researching into Bath for the book, obviously, and really going into this material, I kind of, at first, when I started looking into the origins of it, I came to this figure called Bladud, King Bladud, and he's written about by a Catholic archdeacon, a guy called Geoffrey of Monmouth, in a very early text, kind of 11th, 12th century text, called Historia Regum Britanniae, which is the history of the kings of Britain. And so the actual only account that we have of this figure is from Monmouth. It's the earliest account. And this is very late in the game. But Monmouth himself, he puts the dating of when Bladud founded the first settlement at Bath between 863 to 500 BC. So obviously that's a lot earlier than we can see from physical evidence.
Right.
And so this character Bladud, a fascinating story behind him, a very beautiful kind of metaphorical story of transformation, which seems to be written only by Geoffrey of Monmouth himself. We don't find any other historians before him talking about him. I mean, there's many other historians which are very well known. There's one who was very kind of big through Saxon early times and sort of into the late Saxon period, a guy called Bede. And in later years, sort of about the turn of the 20th century, he was kind of given an honorary sainthood by the Catholic Church, but he wasn't made into a saint. They called him the Venerable Bede. This was the title they gave him. And so he's one of the key historians that most people will read if they go through classic history, or they go to kind of upper-class schools in England. They'll read volumes and volumes by this Saxon historian Bede. But obviously he's one of the key sources that's used, and he doesn't mention Bladud. at all. So
weird.
Even though we have this incredible story about this early king that founds the city, you can't actually find him anywhere else. Even though in Monmouth's version he has 3 sons who are hugely important. And one of them is actually a guy called Gwyn, who in the Welsh mythology is known as the king of the fairies, or the king of the fair folk. And he seems to sort of be the underworld figure. So, I mean, you have this very important figure of Welsh mythology, and his father being a guy who is only spoken about by one, again, Benedictine Catholic friar, you know. So, you know, he was a guy he'd come from Brittany and moved to Monmouth. He spoke Breton, Latin, and Welsh, and so he got hold of manuscripts from a friend of his called Walter, the Archdeacon of Oxford, and the material actually was apparently a kind of collection of some of the older Welsh tales, and from this Monmouth said that he translated this history of the kings of Britain, because for anybody that does have much knowledge on the Druids and the whole Druidic system, the bards would be the people that would remember family lineages and also the lineages of kings. And most of the time this was oral tradition, and it wasn't to be written down. And so we have these later versions which were picked up by the Catholics of the early Christian church, but they seem to be very much lacking in their essence of what we know about Druidic culture. So yeah, you have this fascinating character who seems to create this bladdered figure out of nothing, but also with these very strange connections with his family and with his son. And so the story of Bladud is a fascinating one. He's supposedly a Welsh prince who, late in his education, he's training in a kind of Druidic fashion. He is sent to Athens, and while he's in Athens, he's training with the various philosophers and teachers and astrologers there. And he actually becomes ill. He's stricken ill, and 4 of his close philosopher friends actually take him to a place up in the Athenian hills, and he comes upon a fountain, and he drinks from this fountain, and he's momentarily cured. So then he returns with these mysterious 4 figures back to Britain, and founds a few different colleges of learning on his way back. But when he arrives back at his actual kingdom, where he's come from, one of the Druids of the High Court notices that he's actually got a kind of a strange mark on his face, and they inspect it, and they tell him that he has leprosy, and so he's banished from the kingdom as an exile. And so, yeah, I mean, very, very intricate story, which carries on through the kind of the romantic historians that came after Geoffrey of Monmouth. They kind of embellished this story, and so that the kind of the full narrative I'm giving you is kind of the embellished full story, and kind of almost the accepted founding of Bath story that you'll hear if you go to any of the museums, or if you go to any of the heritage centres in Bath. They'll talk about Bladud. That is the founding of Bath as far as the city is concerned.
And I mean, do you think that the story is a fabrication, or is there more evidence that points to that this was a real man who lived?